Hello, everyone. I'm Frank Fumi, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. We are here in Las Vegas at the 2025 IFA Annual Convention. Super excited to interview franchise founders and industry pros. John Cassetta here, the business growth leader for Aon. John, how are you?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. All right, John, so what is Aon?
Well, Aon is essentially an insurance broker. We are global in nature, but for purpose of this conversation, we'll talk about the United States.
Okay.
We handle risk management and insurance programs for a lot of franchises across the country.
Okay. So do you typically work with just mature brands or emerging brands come to you? What's sort of your wheelhouse?
Really all of the above. Current in our relationships, we do have a lot of established brands, but we do have some emerging brands that are really looking for their first insurance solution.
I would imagine there's also brands that should have come to you already, and they come to you after there was a problem.
In an ideal world, yes. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people don't realize the importance of having that relationship with their broker until they've already gone through that pain point. Our job is, really to educate them and make sure that, we're doing our best, to help set them up for success.
Okay, if I'm an emerging founder, I bootstrap my company, I've got like 20, 25 franchises, not super profitable yet, but I want to make sure I have coverage and I don't lose my company. What are maybe 3 or 4 policies that I must have to make sure I protect myself?
I mean, there's definitely not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach because, all industries are different, but one thing that is going to be common across all of them is liability protection. If you don't have something that's going to protect you against some sort of general liability exposure, whether it's a slip, trip, and fall in your restaurant, or I accidentally cause damage to somebody else's property if I'm going into their home to do, whatever the work may be, that's something that a lot of people don't really think of because liability it's really invisible. Mm-hmm. You don't see it until it's too late, right?
Right.
And there's other things too. Property coverage, you have things, you want to protect that stuff. Against things like theft and fire and whatnot. Those are the 2 big ones. And then you start to do a deeper dive into the industries to see where their expertise may or may not have an exposure. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of professional liability policies, for people that are in the advisory business like myself, mm-hmm. right? And people that are doing that are going to have to make sure that they have some sort of errors and omissions or professional liability to make sure that they're not causing damage unnecessarily to somebody.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the challenge that franchisors have with rolling these things out to the franchisees because mm-hmm. they don't want to push it on them and make it mandatory, right? That they that they go through you. But tell me how they kind of work that in and kind of weave that in to encourage franchisees to utilize your services.
Yeah. So I mean, for starters, a franchisor. They really need to make sure that they are looking out for the best interest of the entire system.
Absolutely.
And if there are liabilities, we'll just use that as the example right now. Mm-hmm. If there's liabilities that exist in the franchisee space, what you don't want to have happen is an underinsured scenario now blows back on the corporate system.
Right.
Right. And that will always happen if you haven't protected those interests. Nobody likes to be told what to do. Mandatory is never a fun thing. Totally get that. And there's always that pushback on the franchisee level that, why do I have to do this for you when that system isn't requiring that mm-hmm. same level or maybe nothing at all, right? And I totally get that. But then there's also the flip side to that, the education knowing, where your liabilities start and what the consequence would be for inaction.
Right. Do you see any trends or anything changing in terms of the kind of policies that people are getting nowadays?
The types of policies, no. But the levels of protection, yes.
Gone way up.
We're a very litigious society in the United States.
Sure.
20 years ago, people would just buy you a sandwich and all was forgiven. Mm-hmm. Now I can sing the jingles to dozens of personal injury attorneys across the country. Mm-hmm. And that's not to bash attorneys. It's just that's the system that we're navigating through. And we can debate all we want about how liable you may or may not be. The laws are what they are. And if we've decided that you're liable, you're liable. So now we have to make sure that within that we're setting you up for success to know where you can protect yourself in the best way possible.
Fair enough. Okay, the IFA Convention. Is this your first?
This is my first national. I've been to other IFA events.
What do you think of this one so far?
Oh, it's fantastic. Great people. And I was at the Austin event for emerging franchises last November, and the fact that I'm walking around and I already see familiar faces, and the last time it was, "Hi, I'm John, how are you?" Now I'm getting hugs. It's great. It's an amazing community of franchisees and franchisors. Love to be a part of this.
It is a genuine community that
really
truly cares, and it's amazing even when we see competitors in franchising that can be shoulder to shoulder and figuring things out together and sharing best practices.
It's very collaborative.
And
like you said, the competition's not competition. I look at it as they're helping validate each other in the marketplace.
That's a great way of looking at it. Yeah, that's true. Well, John, thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.